Have you ever been confused about how to call a class method in Python? It can be tricky, especially when you see different styles being used. If that's you, then you're in the right place. Today we're diving into the differences between calling class methods using self and the class name. I totally get it. It can be really frustrating when you're trying to understand the nuances of Python, and class methods seem to add another layer of complexity. You're not alone in this. Many developers face the same confusion. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. One user asked, when should I use self to call a class method, and when should I use the class name? This is a common point of confusion, so let's break it down together. To understand this, we need to clarify what class methods are. Class methods are defined with the @class method decorator and take a class as their first argument. This means they can be called on the class itself or on an instance of the class. Let's explore the differences in calling them. And stick around. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of when to use self versus the class name, and I promise you'll feel more confident in your Python skills. To understand the difference between calling a class method using self and using the class name, let's first look at the example provided by the user. In the first class, the method open is called using self. This means that the method is being called on an instance of the class. In contrast, the second class calls the method open using the class name hello. This approach is used when the method does not need to access instance-specific data and can be called directly from the class itself. So when should the user use self versus the class name? If the method needs to work with instance variables or methods, the user should use self. If the method is independent of instance data, calling it with the class name is appropriate. In summary, both approaches are valid, but they serve different purposes. Understanding when to use each will help the user effectively utilize class methods in their code. Fun fact, did you know that Python was named after the British comedy series Monty Python's Flying Circus? Just like the show, Python programming can be full of surprises. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. This user explains that the difference between calling a class method using self or the class name lies in how Python handles attributes. Class-level attributes belong to the class namespace, while instance attributes are specific to each instance. When you call a method using self, Python first checks the instance's attributes, and if not found, it checks the class's attributes. This means that if you override the method in a subclass, using self will call the overridden method, while using the class name will always call the superclass method. Therefore, if you expect to extend the class, using self is usually the better choice. Here's a quick tip. If you're unsure whether to use self or the class name, think about what you need to access. If it's instance-specific, go with self. If it's class-specific, use the class name. And there you have it. You should now feel more confident about calling class methods in Python. Remember, practice makes perfect. If you found this video helpful, hit that subscribe button for more programming tips and keep coding.